I recently rewatched the Indiana Jones films.
Mhm.
And the difference...
I just saw the first one for the first time a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so you saw Marion Ravenwood.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between her and Willie in Temple of Doom, it's like Marion Ravenwood is such a wonderful love interest for Indy.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is, I mean, she's wearing pants in the first movie. She is soft and feminine at times. She's drinking dudes under the table at others, but she's not always self-assured. Karen Allen, just wonderful in that part. And when she's giving him shit, it's because he walked into her bar, started shit, and I mean, okay, problematic by today's standards, the suggestion that he got with her when she was like 16 years old, that line, I was a child, like, ooh, that is not aged well.
I mean, here's the thing. Taylor Swift still sings about, I was a child when I was 19, which technically true. Your brain hasn't fully finished developing.
So does Adele.
Yeah. So I can totally interpret that line as she was 18, 19.
Fair enough. I'm going to do that going forward because that wasn't the intent, but times have changed in terms of, it was not uncommon for guys who were about to get drafted 18, 19 years old to go off and marry their 16-year-old sweetheart. We didn't see it the same way as we do now. But compare her to, and you haven't seen Temple of Doom yet, but the way Willie and Indy are just screaming at each other in the second movie. And apparently both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were going through divorces at the time. And that's what they write that off to, which I think is interesting, retroactive self-awareness. But that's the difference. When somebody can give a zinger, it's good. When someone is not letting a guy keep his testicles, that's the way it works in movies is not the way it works in real life. And this is something I've become increasingly working with men and totally understanding why they just feel like they've not just had their balls cut off, they feel like they've had their skin ripped off by that demand they both be sensitive on cue and completely gaslit when they have negative feelings. I think we need to start rethinking the enemies to lovers trope, just because they often don't do it the way they do with what's his name, Zuko and
Katara.
They have like seasons and seasons and seasons to do the transition.
So, in my tweet when we were talking about that, I mentioned Zuko and Katara, which for those who don't know, is an extremely popular ship. And there was actually a point where the writers were specifically leaning towards it at a point when the showrunners weren't really paying attention, and they were so hands off that the writers were like, okay, we have to figure this out. And that's why Legend of Korra is so much weaker than Avatar: The Last Airbender, is because while you had the same showrunners, they didn't have the same writers. And so the ones who were actually bringing the strength to Avatar: The Last Airbender were the writers. And so the writers had all set up for Zuko and Katara to get together. And I think they are an incredible example of enemies to lovers. And part of it is also because Zuko has such a powerful redemption arc. And, there's that moment in the last season where he gives her the option of revenge. And it's like, it's hands off. He's like, I know who killed your mother. He takes her there. There's no judgment. She can do whatever she wants. And I found that so much better than Aang, who's preaching at her about forgiveness and moving. And I'm like, why is she with Aang? Why is she not with Zuko, which would be a politically advantageous match for everyone? Their personalities mesh anyway.
But I mean, there's an example. The reason it works is he actually does change. As opposed to they just fall for each other with no character evolution. She's not falling for the person that was the enemy. She's falling for an improved person.
Yes. And that's also a thing with, oh God, I had an example that just ran out of
Leia is, okay, it's written really unevenly. They get into the books and stuff like that. People went all over the place with what happened there. But the idea I always took that you were supposed to believe was that working with the rebellion changed him. It gave him more of a core. It gave him something to fight for. And that was why, you know, the whole I love you, I know thing worked. But, you know, you still do. There was so much potential in those movies for their relationship, but Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford and wanted out. So we didn't get any of the goodness. But I mean, I think I've talked about this before, that how I would have written Han Solo's death is that he ends up saving his son's, you know, Force soul by, you don't see who hits the button on the saber when he's killed, and he ended up hitting it himself, denying, you know, that black mark on his son's soul, and that was going to come back, and Han finally does something sacrificial. I was waiting for that, and it just ended up being a bullshit enemies to whatever the fuck that was thing at the end. And that's the other example is
God, that was so toxic.
Well, it was toxic, but it was also too many characters, not enough to do.
Yeah.
So Kylo Ren, people say he was redeemed. He was redeemed. How? Why? No, he's not. He's the same whiny little shit he was at the beginning. And why are we elevating these male characters that are whiny little shits who all look the fucking same? Like Ezra Miller, Adam Driver, and there's one other guy who looks very similar. Why do they all look the same?
And like that's another thing, going back to Pride and Prejudice, is Darcy changes.
Yes.
And it's like he's, some of the stuff he says comes off badly, but we also see that he is socially awkward. He says it himself. Darcy, I suspect Darcy is neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, but also he's rich and he comes from a very proud family. We see his aunt.
He does the expected thing of covering up his awkwardness with gruffness. That's Austen is all about what people are expected to do.
And then admittedly, that first proposal, it was socially awkward. It was not great. But Elizabeth also lays into him.
Yeah.
And she's like, from within a week of our acquaintance, I knew that you were the last person in the world I could be prevailed upon to marry. Oh, good. I remembered an intelligent quote.
There we go. But I mean, there's an example of that. That's a point where it worked. You understood why she was angry, as opposed to just constantly griefing a guy. Because I don't know, some writers must have a humiliation fetish. I mean, they're TV writers, of course they do. It's a job requirement. But it just is so... It bothers me to watch because there's a way to do it of, hey, cut it the fuck out. Back off. Now, what's really wrong? You can do that and you can show less toxic exchanges without just doing the tropey bullshit. And I think that the difference between, now that tropes have become an inherently bad thing, pro tip, it's impossible to avoid all tropes. You know, instead of doing it consciously and recognizing, hey, the trope alone is not a defense. They're just emulating stuff. Oh, people like this, so do more of it, instead of going, okay, why does this work? Why do people like it? Why did this work in this instance? And is it the right call? You know, people can like chocolate, but you know, chocolate isn't always the best thing to have with, say, I don't know. There are foods that don't go with chocolate.
Scrambled eggs.
Okay. You know, I was going to say meat, but mole, I make mole, but yeah, you know, ketchup and chocolate. that kind of thing. Like
that was
like
my
ketchup.
first thought, actually.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Ketchup and chocolate. People like ketchup. People like chocolate. Maybe not together.
Yeah.
And I do think that because romance is so vulnerable, I think a lot of writers with it, and oh, we need a romance. I really don't want to write one. And sometimes it's not the right call. Sometimes it's better to avoid it. But okay, we need one. I really don't want to write one. They've never had an actual functional relationship in their godforsaken life. They don't know how people click, right? But they have to write it.
Yeah.
And so it just ends up being pap.
And I mean, we've talked about how a lot of the people who are writing comics nowadays don't have the same life experiences that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and all these other people did, and it shows.
Yeah.
In the writing.
Yeah.
But
what were your other points?
So my one last point, really, and as long as you don't have anything else to say, maybe we can wrap up.
I just go with the flow. So
okay. So my partner has been playing Final Fantasy VII, and apparently I dragged him into this because I have a history with Final Fantasy, long story, but he's been playing it and sending me clips, and I see Tifa and Aerith, and they're so cute and they're so much fun.
Yeah.
And the way they're friends, like there are moments when they're both grabbing onto Cloud, and at one point Aerith even says mine. But it's like you still see the friendship there, and they admire each other, and it's not
so he's playing the original.
No, he's playing the remake.
Oh god, they've put in a lot more content in the remake than I played.
I don't know.
I know they released the Yuffie.
No, this is base game.
I don't remember any of this. I remember them forcing Cloud to dress up like a girl, and found that really disturbing, and people thought it was so funny, and I'm like, no, he's not into it. This ain't cool.
I mean, that aside, there's a point where like they're going through this glowing door. I don't really know the context, but he's like, ghosts aren't really my thing. And the girls both grab his arm, and Aerith is like, at least we have a bodyguard, mine. And it is cute, and it's like,
yeah.
And the characters are adorable, and I'm like, obviously I haven't played the game, but from what I've seen, that feels like good secondary female characters to me, especially because
they're great characters.
Yeah, they're both as secondary characters, finishing up on a positive note. And they're also, neither of them is really what you expect. They're, Aerith, you see her, the pink dress and everything, but she's pushy.
They changed that from the original game. It took a bit for me to adjust to that.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, it's a valid character. And so she's a little pushy. And so she's not the pure little flower girl from the slums. And then you get Tifa, who is so badass and also very sexy, but she's also a sweetheart. And so it's like, I look at those and I'm like, those are great female secondary characters.
The Final Fantasy VII, and even Yuffie, because Yuffie's goofier, and they're individuals. Yes. And I think, ironically, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been watching a lot more anime, but also Western things inspired by anime that aren't anime, like Castlevania. And the thing that anime has that the Western stuff that try to copies it doesn't, is that there's a greater diversity of base tropes for female characters in anime than there is in Western kind of taxonomy, if you will. And I really do think that has led to more better variations, more creative things. And obviously, you know, Western and Eastern culture borrow a lot from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there are way more named character tropes for women,
mm-hmm.
just it changes the presumptions that an audience makes going in. So if somebody's kind of, you know, if a woman's kind of standoffish or a little bit mean off the top, it's like, oh, she's a tsundere,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not, oh, she's a bitch. As
Yeah.
opposed to with Western media, it's femme fatale, girl Friday, damsel in distress. I'm sure we could rip off a few.
It's the Madonna whore dichotomy is
right.
What it all comes down to.
Right. And because Japanese media is not intending to reflect reality, it's intending to displace reality, they ain't getting caught up in that.
Yeah. And he's also been playing Final Fantasy 16. That was actually how this whole thing started.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought, okay. That's why I got confused. Yeah.
And yeah, no. So he started with 16, and because the trailers came out, and he was like, oh, that's cool. And then played the demo, and he knows I have a history with it. So apparently this is my fault.
With Final Fantasy.
Yes. Because I was really into it back when I was in my anime phase, even though I couldn't play it.
What, like the extended stuff, like the Spirits Within and stuff like that?
Like Advent Children, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I had a huge crush on Cloud too, which is a bit funny. But so he's also he's also been playing 16, and Clive and Jill are just absolutely adorable as a couple. They're also canon, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But like, she actually supports him in his decisions.
Right.
And it's not arguing or sassy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a sweet feminine character.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. She still has her rapier. And I mean, she's Shiva, I think.
Yeah.
She's like the source for Shiva or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, she's sweet and still has a little bit of attitude. The game gets spicy. Like, there is very clearly sexual content here. But I've been so enjoying the clips he sends over. And I'm like, okay, I need to actually sit down and watch the cut scenes movie. But it's like, yeah, it's, oh my God, the good characters, and Clive is so hot.
See, it's funny because, you know, Japan, and this is another thing that they get wrong with characters like Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Japan has a concept of feminine strength, which isn't just how much physical violence you can endure or how much abuse you can endure. It's like a strength of will, or a because, you know, when you get into chi and the, you know, masculine and feminine of energy and all that stuff, it's sort of an inspirational force. And so Japanese media doesn't get stuck the way Western media does with, well, if you're feminine, you can't be strong. And if you're strong, whenever you're feminine, it's weak. It's just not, you know, we talk about this is a place where Bishonen are a beloved thing. You know, we certainly don't have the hangups that.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Bishonen literally means beautiful boy.
Yeah. It's, and men love the bishis, women definitely love the bishis. And you see it in, you know, the K-pop acts. They're doing the bishi thing. I mean, they take 3 hours on their makeup. Those are that is what's been shit on by Western critics of media, and that, I think, is exactly what we actually need to cut some of the bullshit that's going on. Because if we open up what men can be, which is why I really want you to see the Barbie movie, because
I'm just waiting for my mom. It's
okay,
you know, she she can't go until the stars align. And so I'm just waiting for the stars to align.
Because what Ryan Gosling does in that movie, he's being lauded for it, but he's being praised for his comedy, not his acting. But the way his entire face changes during the various phases of that character's journey, I marveled at it. He was taking it seriously as a dramatic role, even though it was totally goofy.
Even just like the bits I've seen from the trailer, I totally buy it. Like when the first pictures came out, we were all like, why is he blonde? And it looked so weird, but now I see it and I'm like, yeah, no, that works.
He's so good. I mean, Margot Robbie's good in it, but he's so good because it was you can't be a guy with an ego and be in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because there's a lot of guys who were in Marvel films, and now it's like, oh, okay, there's another note to them. It's like cool, but yeah, I think we desperately need more, not more of the Japanese influence in terms of there's a lot of everything. And it's easy to say Japanese media is superior because there's just so much. So,
Okay, we have also seen that a lot of people who have been inspired by anime have taken away some of the wrong lessons from it.
Well, because they don't understand how, I mean, the princess in a tower in Japanese media is not the same meaning because they were expected to defend themselves and the castle. So, missing that subtext has led to some stuff that, and I understand, I think people should lay off Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I understand why some people are very protective of the anime designation, because much like The Witcher is a very Polish story, there's just certain things that don't read to a Western sensibility the same way they do to a Japanese person.
Well, I mean, we saw that with Death Note, especially when Netflix did their live action reimagining in Seattle.
Oh God. Okay, I avoided it. I just oh God. Yeah.
I didn't. Oh God, I saw just enough that I'm like, oh fuck you.
I'm so behind on anime stuff that I don't need to rewatch a story I've already seen. I want to partake in new stuff.
It was a terrible adaptation. They missed everything, and they completely wasted Willem Dafoe as Ryuk.
I managed about 20 minutes of Netflix's Cowboy Bebop and went, nope, not going to end well.
No thanks.
Yeah, I mean, Faith, that we didn't even talk about her, and she's a great female character. Like, I don't know. See, there's another one. She's sort of a main character, not so much a secondary character. So I didn't.
Yeah, that's more of an ensemble.
Yeah,
I believe.
And I do think, but I mean, there's a shining example of she takes so much shit instead of going, okay, why did they hypersexualize her in places? What does this inform her character? What does it do? How is it a good starting point for where she goes? It's just, oh, sexy bad.
Yeah. And I'm so tired of that.
Yeah, we don't do that to men. Men are allowed to use, James Bond shows up in a tuxedo. That's sexy. And then Daniel Craig was shirtless through massive portions of that movie, and I mean the ingrown hairs from the waxing, this is clearly a new experience for him, but nobody went, oh, that's so degrading. It's like, woohoo. And it's treated as a very different thing, and as long as it's treated as a very different thing, you're not going to get really great, memorable, iconic female characters because everybody is being so fucking neurotic about the assembly process.
Yeah, it's like I remember when the Final Fantasy VII remake was coming out, and there were some people who were like, oh, they reduced Tifa's boobs, and some people who were still complaining that they're so big, and I'm like, shut up and let me have some representation here.
Well, and also, I mean, when you look at the original graphics of the game, it I a lot was made of that. I think she's still Tifa.
Yeah.
They added more clothes to the costume.
Yes.
I get why I wish people would have reservations, but wait until the damn thing comes out. The problem with the way this stuff happens, I mean, people watched videos of the Barbie movie, didn't see the movie, watched videos on it, and then started arguing with me about whether it hates men. I'd seen the movie.
And that's why I haven't said anything about it publicly yet. Is because like I'm already forming some opinions, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna wait until I've seen it so I can actually counter some of these points that I'm already pretty sure are wrong, but
yeah, and
I'd like to be informed.
When I looked at, everybody freaking out about that original She-Hulk trailer, I'm like, okay, in context, this is probably a very different thing. And it was, but some people were so whipped up by what they were told they were supposed to think about that scene. They couldn't see what was obviously there because they were so framed. And that's another thing, that if every take on a, feminine representation in media is going to be picked apart, no, they can't market this stuff. I mean, Ghostbusters Afterlife had to hide the fact that there's a very prominent female character, young female character in it, because I'm sure they thought that if they showed it, and she's fan fucking tastic in it, but they hid it because they knew after that Paul Feig monstrosity, people were going to freak out if they saw it.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to anybody in any of this process. It's not fair to the audience, I'm so sick of the fighting over stuff that these are entertainment shows. Nobody is having their freedom taken away. Nobody is losing a night's sleep or a paycheck, or nobody, nothing's actually being taken because you don't like a TV show or a movie.
And here's something I think a lot of people tend to overlook and forget. If the 2016 Ghostbusters had been good, a lot of this could have been avoided. Like there still would have been some people who were complaining beforehand, and some people who might have refused to see it because they're stupid. But at the same time, if it had been good and people had then been able to say, oh, well, you know what, that's actually, it wasn't as bad as I expected. If it had been decent, sorry, I know I'm circling a bit here. If it had been decent, the culture war wouldn't be as bad as it is. Honestly.
And the stupid thing is they marketed it as an all-female Ghostbusters, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Chris Hemsworth is not a woman.
No.
Like, what the fuck?
And it's also just, I am so tired of, like, I understand there is a thing about making female characters kind of crude and having fart jokes, because there is the whole fact women were expected to be, I can't even think of the word right now.
Well, but at the same time, and proper.
Yes. I like demure and proper. I don't like fart jokes. So it's like I want to see female things that don't have to go into that base lowest common denominator thing.
See, that's why, I mean, when I write Princess Sparkle Muffin, I never have her doing that. She'll have, I mean, there was that Christmas thing we did where we were doing the old school radio thing of describing something instead. So, Beelzebub was Solomon fainted, passed out. Beelzebub was drawing a dick on his face in Sharpie.
I saw that part.
Yeah, and so Princess Sparklemuff was like, what is that a palm tree? Like it's funnier because it's not, yeah, get him. She's like, well, that's not right. You know, and it keeps, you can still tell the joke. You still have one character that does go there, but you don't have to have every woman be a bro in a skirt.
And you've read Calidus Chronicles. I have Catherine.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like there's no point in having a whole bunch of female characters who are the same, and it's the Buffy problem, right? I really think that part of this comes down to it because Joss Whedon just has no ability to do character voice. He just needs the joke so badly that everybody ends up sounding the same. He did it in the Avengers. I cringed whenever, because I think that's the beginning of Bro Thor.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they gave him those zingers instead of, you know, even Captain America had a few where he didn't quite slum with him, but I was hoping he'd be more Man Out of Time with a 1950s sentiment and being a little more than I understood that reference. But with Thor, it was so quippy. And I thought it was funny when he was doing the, you know, Mead Hall smashing the coffee cup as a compliment kind of thing. That's the kind of comedy I liked because he felt unique. When you know, a joke could come out of Tony Stark as likely as it's coming out of Thor. Something's wrong with the writing.
And we see so much of that now with a lack of distinct character voice.
Yeah.
And that's
well, because Avengers made $1 billion. And nobody cares if it's good writing when $1 billion is on the table. I mean, that's just the cold, hard truth of it being the entertainment business. And I get that. I totally understand it. But at the same time, I really lament that movie would have made $1 billion no matter what. There was so much pent up demand. You know, the build was such that it's the same way Barbie was a phenomenon because there's just been nothing pink in a really long time. I can't remember the last one because, you know, there's my big
Legally Blonde.
Legally Blonde was probably the last one, wasn't it? Like, that's a while.
That's a long time.
Yeah, because it's all been this Mean Girl stuff, right? It hasn't been a character you can root for.
Yeah, Mean Girls did use a lot of pink in the marketing, but like Regina George was the one wearing pink.
Right. It wasn't an embracing of pink. And I don't know. I think the same reason Wonder Woman did so well, despite it being uneven, there was just pent up demand.
Yeah.
And so people don't really care why something makes money when it makes money. Hollywood's like, people liked it, do it again. Instead of going, yeah, people aren't going to like it the same way the second time. Shock of the new. You got to wow them in a different way. That's not predictable. So nobody wants to be the person who greenlights that, because if you greenlight it and it works, you're a genius. But if you greenlight it and don't, you get fired. There are structural reasons why things are the way they are. But I think it's undeniable that critical pressures regarding depictions of women have overcome the artistic process. And the fact that female creators who actually have to do the work were shouted down by these cultural critics, that was just ridiculous. And I don't know why it happened, other than the guys calling the shots had a guilty conscience. They're not comfortable with their own sexuality. And you know, the things they like, they're not comfortable in their own skin. And so, yeah, they have not great thoughts about women. But, you know, we all have moments we have not great thoughts about men too.
True.
And I think it's much better to embrace that and go, yeah, not my best moment. We all have them. Than be so racked with guilt that everything we do is designed to get good people points instead of just, can I defend this to myself? You know, really looking down and going, do I have the best intentions in this creation? Or am I pandering? Am I being cynical? And I think at the end of the day, cynicism's the death of art.
Agreed.
And easy to say, hard to do.
Yeah.
But somebody has to start doing it. And I do think that, as I said in the video I made it, I think I hope that there will be a turn of the tide regarding the way we approach women in media.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a slow change because Barbie's being dismissed as bimbo feminism. And it's like, what? Just because a woman is girly does not make her a bimbo. Just because a woman is innocent doesn't make her a bimbo. What the fuck? Why are we doing this to each other?
I'm so tired of that. Just, you know, if you want to be gentle, you're weak. And then of course we get some of the women on the trad wife side are just so stupid. And it's like, I think they make it harder for everyone.
See, I think they're very manipulative.
Yes.
They're getting theirs because let's face it, if these guys think trad wives are going to be docile when they get that ring on their finger, these guys do not know how that system works.
The thing, I don't think many of these women actually understand true traditional femininity and the idea of the woman of valor. But right. I've watched enough of them that there are a couple who are just stupid. Like, nothing between their ears, but they've managed to monetize pick-me status.
Well, and those are the legitimate pick-me girls.
Yes.
I mean, that's an overused insult, but
yes,
there are women who do sell out other women to be noticed by guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real thing. We all know at least one. Just the fact that it's funny because I think the ones that tend to level the insult are probably the worst. Because
gee, thanks.
well, no, but not in this case, because we're going, it's real, it's overused.
Yeah.
I noticed that in the sign-off post Anita Sarkeesian posted, she still had Buffy the Vampire Slayer enthusiast on her bio.
It was kind of funny because I think it was before the pandemic, there was talk of a Buffy reboot. I don't know if anything.
Yeah. Well, they can't separate him from it, and anything with his name on it is poison now.
Well, it's interesting because they had announced a race bent Buffy.
Yes.
And Anita was one of the women going, no, you can't just change. And I'm like,
really?
You fucking hypocrite.
I just don't know why they don't make a Faith series if you're going to do that. She's right there.
I don't know. People, it doesn't have the name recognition.
I guess, but I mean, rest in peace, Paul Rubens. I still like the first movie better. I'm like the only person on the planet who enjoyed that it was campy and fun, and I actually thought Christy Swanson's Buffy was somebody I could get behind more as a vampire murdering cheerleader. Not that I dislike Sarah Jessica Gellar. She's done some interesting stuff. I think she's miscast a lot, but
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah Michelle, what did I say?
Sarah Jessica Gellar.
Oh my God, I combined Sarah Jessica Parker and Sarah Michelle Gellar. That just, yeah, says so much. All right, time to stop. I'm combining girls with abnormally large heads. Okay, so Song, do you have anything to add? As you got all your points out? You said 3, and then I thought you only made 2, but maybe
no, I made the 3. It was, the annoying female friend in rom-coms.
Oh, okay.
write characters just as female characters as characters, and the Final Fantasy VII girls.
Okay, awesome. Because I mean, I do like that people are starting to say that this series is like an inoculation against red pill stuff, because it's like
the comment made me smile.
I felt so good about that, because it's just like there's a lot of people that miss what we're doing here, but that person got it. That I think that part of the reason we have this issue, we did pretty well finding good examples eventually, but
we had to go to Japan.
Well, yeah, but the idea that women, well, Agatha too, but even then, that was women as rivals, as opposed to. I'd love to see a show where very different women, and I tried to make this show, and they wanted to make one of the characters a gay man, and that's when I very politely got up and left. But women who are very different, who, I'm describing the Golden Girls now, who support each other, but they do clash, they do have disagreements. That is what we very much need, but not, the big problem with the Golden Girls is they made way too much out of Dorothy being unappealing and mannish. And I always thought that was, they were trying to talk about an insecurity of the time, but they pumped it for too many jokes, because I'd like a program that shows you don't have to be a particular thing to appeal to men, because different men like different things. And twisting yourself into pretzels, doing a whole bunch of stuff you don't like to attract quote unquote men or quote unquote women, you're just going to end up that guy or that girl. You're just going to end up miserable and unfulfilled, because you ultimately have to accept who you are, recognize there's some things you need to work on, but if you're just not, you're just, if you're not a tough person, you're not. It's okay to be kind. And I guess that's what we're getting at with like the love interests and the Mary Jane part, is being kind is a virtue, and we need more of it.
I mean, that really is what a lot of this is, oh my God, please let female characters be kind.
I'd like let all characters be kind. I think there's not enough. Part of the reason that people love Solomon from Boss Fight so much is he's a freaking cream puff. And people really want to see him get a win because he's sweet. And the whole thing about creating him was, this is a guy who actually wants to be a sidekick, but feels like he has to be a warrior. And he was really badly abused by people who didn't appreciate what what his strengths were. And it was so nice to see guys relate to that. It really verified a lot of the things I'd suspected, but I had no proof of. And I mean, I think that's part of the reason I've gone so whole hog into this stuff, is I do believe that if you give people stuff in a way that gives them a reason, they will embrace it. But whenever they start, I mean, emotional reactance is a valid psychological principle.
And I mean, that's what a lot of the commentators on the left and the right wing, I think, have monetized, and that's why rage bait works.
Yeah, but we also have to keep in mind that reactance comes from people feeling like they're having something taken away, notably a freedom, but I think also comfort.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason so many people care about this stuff, like get really, really upset about it, is because, I want to put this very carefully, it really doesn't matter, and that's why it shouldn't feel threatening. And women have had to deal with media because it was male dominated, especially in film for so long, just making us feel like shit because we didn't see ourselves in the one type of woman that was allowed to exist as appealing and valid at one time.
Mm-hmm.
We should understand why men, and I know should's a loaded word, but hear me out, why men are having the reaction they have now and going, too bad, we needed to take it, is not enlightened.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly.
And that is my issue with a lot of what I see now in modern feminism, is that it hasn't become we want equal, it's we want to be
revenge.
Able to behave. Yeah, we want revenge, and we want to be able to behave as badly as you did.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone getting better, it's women getting worse.
Yeah. And on that note, next to Women Talking, we are going to have a man joining us. So
have we figured out what we're going to call that?
Not yet. It's going to depend on how we shape the topic.
Okay.
But look forward to that next. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun conversation, and always good to shake up the format. Until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed this long form look at popular culture, because that is the way women talk, and a lot of tangents and which is often the point. So I'm Leanna, tomboy, song WX and girly girl, author of Calidus Chronicles Volume 1. Check it out on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Anywhere else now, or just those two still?
I mean, it's pretty much on every book site, I think, because I have it in extended distribution.
Cool. Okay, so wherever you get your books, it's
pretty much.
So like Apple Books and all that. I don't know. I still buy Treeware. I like this.
I need to look into Apple Books and see if it's there, or about posting it there. But yeah, I'll look into it.
Check it out. And until next time, Song, any final words?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right, we're done.